Welcome to 221B Baker Street by way of the Southgate Bridge. I am Sherlock Holmes. As you know, my Watson, Kristen Deere, is on sabbatical. She misses you all and hopes to be back eventually. But I've decided to make this season special. This is the season of the irregulars. Special guest hosts every week, and this week is no exception. For this week, we have a fan from across the other pond, Karen Vera.
Hi, delighted to be here.
Yes, I found her and a few others in the Johnny Little fan club. Amazingly, there was a couple of elementary fans in there. What a shock!
Yeah, who would have thought?
And would you like to tell the fans the listeners anything about yourself, Karen?
Yeah, I'm a longtime Johnny Lee Miller fan, and I love the show Elementary. It's the only show I rewatch like every Thursday. I'm waiting for it to come on, and I can't wait to see it. So I don't do that for any other show really, except for this one.
And to give the listeners an idea of how international we are, why don't you tell them where you're calling from?
I'm calling from Singapore. I work here. I'm actually from the Philippines, but I found a job here in Singapore. So I've been here for like 5 years. And so I watch the show like Friday morning, actually, or Friday evening when I get back from work. So I'm excited to talk about the show, and I would love to this show to get even more attention if it can. So I'm trying to help out a bit with you.
Oh, that's what we try very hard to get as much hype about it as we can, because this show is a hype that can last a while, in my opinion.
Yep.
So this week we talk about which was, I think, one of the funnier titles for episodes, Tag Your Meat.
Yes.
So we start off with Sherlock is baking a nice little meal for Clyde, and I'm a little curious of what that tastes like.
Yes, but anytime an elementary episode has Clyde in it, it's just already like plus 100 points.
He has his own Twitter feed.
Oh, totally. I follow it for sure.
He's responded to me a couple times.
What? Well, that Clyde, legs can get some phone action then and answer you back.
I've tried to get him for an interview on the show, but he's this total diva.
He might have a doppelganger. How about that?
Ah, yeah. Well, according to Holmes, that's his father.
Oh, well, wrong cold-blooded reptile, apparently.
Now, we start, and also from there, we go right into the meat of the crime, because we have a man busting in, and he seems like he's angry and he wants some revenge.
Yes. So, yeah, this kind of tension is like, it's a good setup, because Elementary is a procedural show, but this kind of tension of the crime where, you think somebody gets murdered, and then there's a second person that the criminal didn't expect. So there was a good setup. I think that was quite a strong lead into the crime.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like, this episode had a lot of good elements to it. Like you said, the tension was really good.
Yeah, and so that's when finally, because Sherlock is back in the graces of the NYPD, he gets called in, right?
I was really surprised because I figured this season they're gonna be about them too, but no, they got right back into it.
Again, that's part of the intrigue of this whole season 4, is because with Moreland in the show, we don't know if they'll take a left turn, a right turn, and because the setup, the foundation of the show from the 3 seasons previous is so rich and wonderful, and I mean it gets me more excited about season 4 more than ever.
Well, something I've always said about what makes the show really good is nothing happens for no reason in this show.
Yes. If we can get into that, I don't know if you want to interrupt your storytelling for now, but I think
go ahead.
Elementary is like, because I think you can tell from the writers that they appreciate the show so much. They appreciate the actors so much. They appreciate the fans a lot, because there's so many callbacks to what fans are expecting. They find the right material to bring some crimes that are not necessarily explored in a lot of TV shows. I mean, I really appreciate it as well that this doppelganger technology, the previous.
Oh yeah, this episode, I think more than anything goes to your point.
Yes. So yeah, that's why, I mean, some might say that the procedure is a weakness of the Elementary show, but in the end, because we have such a strong material to work with, it's always a pleasure to watch. I mean, some crimes might be more solvable than others, or might be less mysterious, but there's always something going on that makes you want to tune in all the time.
Very much so. It's just one of those shows. Even the weaker episodes are stuff I'll watch even a couple of
Me
times.
too. Me too.
Now, speaking of Holmes throwbacks, we get a nice Holmes. This is something classic Holmes could do too. He identifies which doppelganger is which by the smell of the tobacco.
Yes, because he has monographs on, what kind of tobacco residue happens, right? I mean, he's mentioned that before.
Yes, and I like how he's right back there, like his back and forth with Bell. That was
Yeah.
just awesome. And
Yeah.
one thing I like about it is like you assume, of course, oh, this must be a long lost twin or something.
Yes.
But and they pretty quickly, because even the guy's adopted father says, oh, he was adopted. I can't tell which is which, but it didn't take long to figure out that the there is no twin thing. It's complete red herring.
Yes. So where does it lead to show us next, right? We go back to the morgue, which we haven't seen in a couple of episodes.
Yeah.
And I miss his like the morgue attendant there, who's his beekeeping, friend, right? I think that's how they got the dad I think a noted theater actor.
Oh yes, it's John
And
Noble. Yes.
yeah, so no, I mean the dad of the dead.
Oh really?
Yeah, it's that Stephen Bogardus, who's I think a lot of big Broadway person. So I mean, even this kind of touches on the show is, it makes it. There's a qualities is driving it in every scene, every word of the show. So can you tell I love the show really,
That's why we
really a
have. That's why
lot.
well, it'd be really bad if I had you on the podcast. I hate this shit.
Anyway, so yes, we're now starting out that they're not twins. What could be tying these two lookalikes together?
I know. I
If
was very
I'm
curious,
Yeah.
but I'm trying to figure out like what could it possibly like if they're not twins. I mean, I under the idea of doppelgangers. So and they go now. There's actually a little B story going on here with
Yes.
this Sherlock's relationship with his father.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's really it might be the B story, but it's really like the guiding soul of this whole episode
Oh
is
yes.
is I, I mean I don't know, I can't wait for us to get to the scenes where Marlon and Sherlock actually uh because it's just so crackling, so crisp, so
Well,
I
it's
wish I
Johnny
could like
LeMille
watch a
and
loop
John
of it.
Noble. I mean,
Yes.
I know. I realize we can call them the two Johnnies.
Yep, and there's also even in the entire cinematography of this show, there's a lot of doppelganging kind of motifs where there's a very centered framing of the scenes where
Mm.
uh, Moreland is in one end and Sherlock's on the other end, and they're like framed together. So it even that kind of I might be reaching here, but even that kind of layers and subtext is really like enriching the show even more. And it's such a thoughtful show that I think not a lot of shows do this kind of thoughtfulness for its audience.
I can agree completely. And so as the case progresses, they're looking at and they find out that the two doppelgangers have only one thing in common. They both made calls to someone who, and they trace to his apartment, and they obviously a guy on the run. But they also find pictures of a whole slew of doppelgangers on the
Yes,
wall.
yes. Yeah, and that's when it's Bell is everyone's like, I think you'll want to see this. I mean, I
Mm.
think he has that beat every episode of Elementary. And so yeah, because again, the mystery here in the show is something that I think ties back to something that's in reality. So there's face recognition technologies upon us. They also did one time the what is it, P versus NP
I think that's right.
plot line. They did the artificial intelligence plot line. These are all real world crimes, and they've tried to put it into Sherlock's the New York City police would come in to ask Sherlock about those kinds of crimes, because that's not really, what their usual motives are for crimes, I guess. And I really appreciate that, because some other crime shows, like for example Sherlock on BBC, their crimes are really out of this world, and the I'm still not over the putting 300 dead bodies into an aircraft and making it go fly, and it's a ghost flight. I mean, that's far fetched. But this one, I mean, they have to find 24 mysteries that can carry a season.
Right.
So, I mean, hats off to the writers of the show. They really, really put a lot of care into creating such a crime. So
I
now
actually
that
prefer this Sherlock to BBC.
that's dangerous territory.
I know.
I,
I might
but
anger some listeners by saying that, but it's true. Well, I don't
yeah,
mean
no,
the
I mean,
actors because I love Benedict Cumberbatch. I just
yes,
meant it's like you said. I prefer this. I prefer procedural.
yes, uh, and it's not just your paint by numbers procedural too.
Right.
It's a real well thought out, well developed procedural. So that's just a wonderful show to be a fan of.
So they go to and they realize that Sherlock realizes that he's hiding out in the neighbor's apartment. So I like Bell just stand outside going knock on the door and he's just waiting for and the guy turns around and I'm
Yeah.
thinking of adopting this look.
Yeah, I mean, like if you go to Facebook right now, like they can tell, right, is this your friend so and so? And like, oh,
well,
robots at work are really, recording how our faces look like.
actually, this episode makes me think of something that actually happened to me. I was in college and we're doing this big trip to Scotland for the Edinburgh Fringe, and we're sitting around at a meeting and someone's looking at the program for the whole festival, and someone goes, "Hey Zach, are you doing another show?" And I'm like, "No, of course I'm not doing another show." And they're like, "You sure?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm not doing another show." And so they're like, "Look at this." They hand me the program. I look down and I swear to God, it's like I'm looking at a picture of myself.
Oh my God.
There was an
You,
actor, a comedian there. I sweir to you, was my
do you
twin.
remember the name of the comedian?
Actually, the funny thing is, I managed to track him down, add him on my Facebook. His last name's like I'd have to find him, but
Beard and all, the whole
oh,
thing? Or
yep,
how did you look in college?
it's pretty much the same now. College was only like 3 4 years ago, but pretty much yeah, the guy like
Yeah.
I had like me had to look a couple times like, am I doing another show? So it made because this whole episode made me think of that. Like this guy, if I sat in his crowd, he'd be like, am I down there?
Well, and he was a performer too, like you.
Yes, which is just I didn't get to meet it, but still, it's just this whole episode just made me think of that over and over and over again.
Yeah. So, yep. So there's a doppelganger out there. Hopefully, your doppelganger's not doing any crimes and asking for
Well,
replacing your
now
DNA with something.
one thing I like they kind of address here is the whole idea is just because someone's paranoid doesn't mean they're wrong.
Yes. Yeah. So that guy who played is it Dorian, the guy who developed the technology?
I
I
believe so.
mean, yeah. So he did his beats really well. I mean, he put this um, make what is it, clown from the future makeup that Sherlock called it,
Oh, that's
and
I
then
actually have that written down. I'm going to mention it later for my favorite lines from the
okay,
episode.
okay, yes, we can. Please carry on. I'm gonna interrupt you. I think so many times here. Let's
No,
just
that's fine.
get
That's
through.
fine. That's fine. Believe
Yeah.
me, that's the whole point. That's no problem there. Believe me.
Okay. Thanks. 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 So
So,
where were we?
well, we can go from wherever. But yeah, so he
Yeah.
believes that a company that he actually, if I understood him right, that he stole like the beta copy or something and made his own, and
Yes.
but it showed flaws in the company, so that
Yes.
he thinks they're the ones coming after him because he also
Yeah.
got mugged, and the guy
Yes.
didn't try to steal any money, so he thinks he was just trying to kill him, and luckily he got away.
Yes. Yeah. And that I work for a tech company, as you know, and
Ah,
that's exactly, we're perfecting the code. I mean, that's like conversation I hear a lot when we're from where I work. So yeah, I always imagine how the writers like diagram how they're gonna lead back to which crime, which character, which motive. I mean, it's really an amazing thing that they do. And in this show, in this episode particularly, because I don't know, were you in suspense on how it was gonna turn out?
I was very curious, I was curious, like, why is there a doppelganger? Like, I was thinking it was going to be some kind of, like, I thought at first, when I first saw it, I thought it was like some twin thing. Then I thought it was getting, well, and I wasn't too surprised at of the why, but it was still very interesting, and it kept me interested the whole episode.
Yes. I think even as you're narrating the story of the episode as we're chatting, I just keep smiling to myself because I'm recalling it in my head and how wonderful those scenes that you're describing are. Um, so yeah, so that's a and they introduce a character like that. I might have stolen it, I might have mugged him, but and do you keep him in mind for down the line of the episode, or are you just
Oh,
taking
I
it
thought,
face
see, I
value?
thought it was going to be like, just some witness or something.
Yeah.
And we also see we get a little more, apparently Sherlock's father is asking to help with a
Yes.
and they have this actress who I'm a huge. She's got
Yes.
such an interesting. Now I'm probably gonna butcher her name, but I'm gonna give it a
Yeah.
shot. Shore Agasalo.
Shore Agadeshlu.
Oh, okay. From now on, whenever they have someone with a foreign name guest starring, I'm having you on the show.
You
But
know
I
what?
love her voice.
I won't shut up about this show. I apologize in advance.
No, but I mean, I thought she's like I've always liked this actress. She's got
Yes.
such an interesting voice.
Yep.
She's one of those people with presence, and
Yes.
she's and that voice, and she's just sexy and very
Yeah.
talented.
Yes. And she's an Oscar nominated actress, right? And she only
Oh,
had basically, yeah, she was in the, oh shoot, I can't remember the name of the movie. Uh, but she was not, maybe it was maybe 6 or 7 years ago she was nominated for an Oscar, and she's excellent in that scene. I mean, uh, the way she engages with Moreland, and it's already feels like it's weighted with more than it what the conversation seems to be about. And yeah, I also enjoyed her presence on the show, and I enjoyed Sherlock just observing her facial her facial expressions to find out, what's going on. So Daddy Holmes can leave New York already, right?
exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, so that scene, and then of course, pardon me, but Johnny Lee Miller looks fantastic in a tuxedo. He really does. Oh
Oh,
my
we
God.
got some, and John Noble just looks so cool. Like, I mean, the
Yes,
funny thing
him
is,
too.
obviously his age works for the part, but if you said older brother, there's some people who might go, yeah, I believe that because he's got, I mean, talk about presence.
Yes. So I mean, it's just there's that makes their scenes together really good. His presence is like, even the way he says Joan. I mean, it's it's amazing. So I hang on to every piece of word that comes out of his mouth. It's just sensational. So
Mm.
putting him with Johnny Lee Miller with Shore Agadishlu all in one scene was just, I'm gonna watch that scene again maybe four more
Oh well, yeah,
times
I
till
mean,
the next
and
episode.
it's fine to jump around too. It's like that scene when he does the reveal. It turns out it's all about monkey and nature conservation. That scene,
Yes,
that one with three of them together was amazing.
yes. I know. I mean, that's and you can see them the way they deliver the dialogue. I mean, as a performer, I'm sure you can even appreciate even deeper, how will how lived in the way they say the words to each other.
Mm.
That um, I know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's like when he says like playing the victim doesn't suit you.
Yes, yes. And I feel like, ow, score one for Moreland, right?
I wonder what made him choose that name, Moreland.
I don't know. It's like the Holmes family has your name must be a weird name with two syllables and two words that don't really go together. Sure and Lock, my and Croft, more and land.
Well, when I hear Moreland, I think of it's well, it's like it makes it's a place in England. It's also a character in like Westmoreland. That's what makes
Yes.
me think of.
Yep. So I mean, I guess they're trying to go for a very, obscure, very Englishy, maybe even Saxony kind of
I would no,
name.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's some connection to Doyle or Sherlock, like the original that we
You know
don't know
what?
about. That's why they picked it.
That's exactly a great point to make because, like we said earlier in the conversation, the writers are really digging into how the Doyle work. They're digging into uh, the present environment of what crimes can be solved. So, uh, such care is, I mean, what I expect from this writing team. So, it's really an interesting way to go. I mean, it's Moreland. So, yeah, it even that intrigues us, right?
Very much so.
Yeah.
And so from that great scene, we actually go like I like how Holmes is a little snitty. With like, you want me to come across town for that? And Watson, it's like, since when does he like? Yes, and she's like, yes, you want to, because apparently there's a third double. Now that was like a third guy. That one was like,
Yes.
whoa.
Yeah. Yeah, and he basically is the big breakthrough in the case because he says, well, you want me an ID, take a DNA test. So that development is yes, it's a unexpected for me as a viewer, and it's really, you're right, very whoa. It's and that actor got to be, I guess, he earned his his pay for that episode. He had to play a corpse. He had to play a shooting victim, and he had to play that nice little confession in the police station. So that actor's like, hey, I got a really good role for this episode. So I don't know the name of the actor though, but he had a lot of work to do in this show for that night.
Yeah. Well, and what I find very fascinating about the character is the whole reason the reason they found the reason, because if he wasn't an honest man,
Yeah.
it would have been maybe they never would have caught anything. Maybe they would have done the DNA
Yes.
test
Yep.
fast, but who?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, but that was pretty much wrapping the point.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's fascinating. Him being honest, he's like, listen, I'm not. They wanted me to take a DNA test. That sounded a little hinky.
Yeah, and so that leads to Sherlock doing another all-nighter, trying to connect the dots of
Oh, but before we do all
yeah.
nighter, we
Yes.
get a wake up call.
Oh yeah. Oh my God, this is like one of my favorite callbacks of the
Oh,
show. Yeah.
that's everyone. And what I love is when the wake up call actually connects to the case.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
he's doing actually like the fight song, whatever, from the college. And of
Yes.
course he is doing Say Anything, but he's like, what? Is that a movie?
Yeah. And then it relates later on when John Michael Hill Bell says, that's from an 80s movie, right?
Yeah,
And
that
like,
was
and
funny.
Sherlock, and sorry, we haven't talked about Watson this whole time, by the way. And
Well,
Watson,
she wasn't really I mean, she was
yes,
in the like last week was much about her and I think it's because this week was more about Holmes and his father.
yes, yes. But I know, but she played crucial elements. I mean, her
Oh
airtime
yes.
might have been not have been a lot, but she was like the whole connective tissue that brought everything together from Morland and Sherlock and the doppelganger investigation. So, and yeah, she got us a great line. She got the line about, you want me to punch you? You don't want me to punch you, right? To Bell about Peter Gabriel and Say Anything. So that's things like that. And the other thing that was really funny is she's about to watch football and she says, and Sherlock says, on a Thursday night. And it's like, isn't that what's been holding up our show for the last couple of
Oh,
years?
that's why they made the line.
Yeah, it's a little in
Oh.
joke, I guess, or promotion by CBS that they slotted in there. So, but so things like that. Lucy Liu carries it very well.
Oh
I
yes.
think she enjoys being on the show and working with the writers of the show and Johnny Lee Miller and the chance with John Noble. I mean, last week was just
John
sensational.
Noble, I think, is Donnie Limmer is of course an accomplished actor. John Noble is someone I could believe he would geek out about. Like he's like, my father's gonna be, and we've said on the podcast since the beginning, who could, and it's
Yes.
funny because I never thought of John Noble, but he's perfect.
Yes, 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 and he's perfect. He has he's played remarkable fathers on film, and what was it? Not Game of Thrones, Lord of
Lord
the
of the Rings or
Rings,
Kingdom.
and
I
and
also do the
Fringe.
podcast. I do the podcast for Sleepy Hollow, and he was on that for a couple of seasons.
But he didn't play a father in that show, though, right?
Actually, well, weirdly enough, not to oh, I don't want to spoil for anyone, but what he played was kind of interesting, and well, in the first part, but that's something we talked about on Headless.
Yeah.
But yes.
Okay.
So they find out that at the play, I'm getting the names of the three guys. Tim
Yeah.
Wagner. The
Yes.
college he went to, there was a scandal. Apparently, a pledge
Yes.
went missing.
Yes.
And they go to the police station. They find out that everybody but Wagner
Yes.
refused the DNA test.
Yep. Because he was still on the hunt for his doppelganger, right?
Yes, but here's something I find fascinating. And think of this: if he had, because he was there, but he was not the killer. If he had just done the DNA test, he'd be alive.
Well, I think he didn't know that there was. Yes, he thought it through. He would have been alive, and he had taken a chance on it. He would have been alive, but because I guess he was paranoid and he still felt some
Hmm.
kind of latent guilt about it, and he didn't know that there'd be his DNA wouldn't be under the nails of the
Right.
victim. He panicked, and it's like his hubris that let me just find a doppelganger. I don't want to even risk taking a DNA test, but He tempted fate, basically, right? And he
And
paid
I
the
think
price.
something that's definitely worth mentioning is, and I realized this on the rewatch because that's why I always watch the episode a second time because when you know what's going to happen, it gives you an interesting perspective.
Yes,
And Otto, first you feel bad for. I was like, oh my god, that guy got killed just because he looks like him.
yes.
But as we found out, because that Otto Newhouse, as we found out from Evan Farrell, he was there because he was trying going to cheat a DNA test, so he's not exactly an innocent man.
Nope, nope, he was not.
Because he wasn't unaware because he took the money, so he probably knew what was going on.
Yep. So that leaves again our investigators. What's the next component of this mystery? Because if
There was
it,
they did that really good this episode. It was like step by step.
yes,
Sometimes they do it one way, other, but this one was like segment by segment, and it came. I think it worked really good because we find out that the man who went missing has a brother in the local police department of the area. I'm like, oh boy.
yep. And so I mean those dots really connected um, as the investigation was going on, right? So yep. And so and there was a nice scene where Aidan Quinn Gregson, tries to get to the bottom of what's happening in that Orkasani police department, and he has some great lines like they I don't know what he said. They won't I know how to get it out of them or something like that. He had a really a wonderful line to pull off in that scene. So and he calls in
And
our team.
yeah, and we find out that the guy cops to like he cops to them. He says,
Yep.
"Yeah, I killed him. It got out of hand. Well, it's just and but then they're like, "Oh, so you also killed Gary?" And he's like, "Well, I've never heard that name before in my life." So we find out that the crimes they're weirdly related and unrelated at
Yeah.
the same time,
Yep.
which I found fascinating.
Yes. So yep, again that goes back to how the writing team of the show just has to pull it all together to connect that little scenario you just described. It's unrelated, but we find a way to relate it that it's not too far fetched, and it's still in sort of in seamless with the entire story. So
I had to like watch a couple of them to fully understand the depth of the case because it was so confusing. Because,
yes.
like I said, it's related and unrelated.
Yes. There are some debate sometimes in among elementary fans how because it's a procedural. They expect Sherlock to be super genius and solve everything, and whilst they're watching the episode, and if they solve it ahead, if the audience solves it ahead of Sherlock, they're like, "Oh, this is a lame crime because I found it out before Sherlock." But
Well, it's like in the first. For different reasons. I knew that in the first episode, I knew the restaurant owner was the killer, but really, it was only because it went like you hire an actor that well known. I'm like, oh, he's so.
but the thing is, in Sherlock's own universe, he doesn't see what the audience sees, right? So he has to only work with
Exactly.
what's the point in the story. We've been given more context. We know a guest star, of course, when we see one. So I go back and forth on it. Sometimes even if it's kind of like you can call it early, I still enjoy the pleasure of the show.
Oh
And
yes.
sometimes you do wish the mysteries are a little bit more challenging, and this one they did find a challenging mystery. But altogether, because the foundation is Sherlock and Watson, um, and their relationship, and which I appreciate is a non-romantic relationship.
Yes, the
Um,
writers have said many times they will never hook up, and
yeah.
I've fully contend if they ever do hook them up, it will ruin the
Oh,
show.
I agree completely. I mean, that's that the how the fabric has been woven will is based on a non-romantic relationship, and it's the show is so much stronger for it and so much more superlative because of it. So yeah, I wish that will never happen, and I'm glad the producers declared right off the bat that's not happening. So yeah, we have a
You know what
great
I've always
show
said?
as a result.
What I want to see happen is Sherlock does a wake up call where he's in Watson's bed completely naked, and she's just like, like maybe or maybe she gets a little drunk and she's like, what happened?
No.
No, not that they actually do anything.
Yes.
That he
Okay.
just like he
Yes.
plays a prank on her or
Yeah.
something.
Oh, that'd be a right challenge for the writers. Then how to, you know, they start at the end of the plot development and have to work their way
Oh, how
backwards.
about this? They get drugged by the villain and it like affects their memory, so they have to piece together their own timetable.
Oh my gosh. Maybe I wouldn't put it past the writing team to come up with a really creative way. We they're fooling us, the audience is thinking, did they, get together? But instead, it's a real more mysterious story around it, and of course they wouldn't get together, and maybe even because they thought they got together, it deepens their true friendship even more. So
Exactly. Yes.
that's going to be a really tasty episode once that happens.
Now, it turns they look back into the case and turns out that man, I want to get his name. He was from the company. I had in front of me. Oh, Curtis Tofano.
Yes.
It turns out, like he told the story that, oh, I only did the doppelganger thing to investigate him, da
Yes.
da 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 da. But it turns out he went to the college
Yes.
and he was a pledge, which is a huge reveal.
Yes.
And he's got an injury that's consistent with the mugging.
Yes. And they had to find his DNA. They had to compel his DNA so they can match it to
Hmm.
the ones
Well, they
found on
found his
the body.
doppelganger,
Yes. Yeah.
and his doppelganger was less. They got him to turn on him, and I like how like the guy's like, "Hey, no," and it's like, "No, we got you. Come on."
Yes. I think that. I mean, as much as I love the show, I think that's one of the crutches of the show is it's very Agatha Christie like to like. So they, everybody confronts the supposed criminal and so there Sherlock will
I
say
know
some
exactly what you mean.
exposition. Watson will say some exposition, and I mean, sometimes there's no choice, but because there's only an hour duration of the show that they have to like rush to the finish line, so to speak.
There was
Um,
actually there's a British comedian team called Mitchell and Webb.
yeah.
They actually made fun of the whole Hercule Poirot
Yes.
like having really no legal evidence and yet still getting the person to
Yeah.
confess. Look it up. It's called Mitchell and Webb.
Yeah.
Just type in Mitchell and Webb Poirot, Hercule Poirot. You'll get it. It's it made me think of it because it's like he has no evidence and he solves the crime.
Yes, and so because you were adopted 10 years ago, have now motive, and you are the murderer. It's like, yes, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. So I'm sure that's
Yeah.
exactly what Mitchell and Webb are talking about, right?
Mm. Yes, exactly. So they get their guy and they wrap up the story. And now here we also get the wrap up for the two Johnnies.
Yes.
And now
Oh
there's a
my
scene here
God.
when Holmes is like saying, and he's like, "Stop it, Sherlock." I think the father's. I think that almost felt like that there was guilt in. Like I think
Yeah.
he's guilty about like that his son has such bile for
Yes, it's
him.
so rich. I mean, um, it's it's so crisp. I already said crisp before, but it's just, oh my God, it's such a sensational scene. The bile that which is his way of resisting his father's propositions, and John Noble, the sincerity is coming through this despite his what he is could be what we've known it to be harsh, and we've seen him be quite sort of malevolent before in other performances, and so
The funny thing, if you look at his headshot on his IMDb, it's so cheery.
yes,
Look it up. It's
yes,
like he's like smiling. He looks so.
I know. So I don't know why. I guess he just has the ability to look,
Oh yes, it's his
yes.
voice.
Oh my God. Yeah. What was that line? Who do you think could have parented you? I mean, bam. That was so.
And we
Uh,
get the second mention of Holmes's mother,
yes.
and it looks like she
Hmm.
passed. I'm almost kind of sad because I would have loved to have had someone for that.
Yes. I'm sure the writers have some fantastic backstory for us coming up.
It almost makes me wish they had flashbacks. You know?
Uh, well, that could be a potential. They did flashbacks for Irene Adler back in season
Oh,
one.
that's
So
true.
maybe they
That's right.
might. Maybe Mycroft might even get a mention. I mean, I thought there was a semi mention of Mycroft in the episode when.
I don't
So
believe
did
they
you?
have yet.
Not yet. Not since Dad came to New York.
But I'm curious. That's what I mean. I'm curious if because we don't know if he knows Mycroft is
Yes.
alive.
Well, apparently, according to Sherlock, his dad's omniscient, so maybe he knows, but
Right.
he's keeping his son's Mycroft safety in mind. But then again, he might not. So
Mm.
there's so much to look forward to with this whole Moreland and Sherlock storyline. So, and that scene was
As
just
you see
great, so
when he
good.
mentions his mother, it affects Holmes Senior.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and then his face, John Noble's face, sort of just collapses, and it's like, oh my
Yes.
God, and then the episode ends and you're like, oh my gosh, we're probably even gonna find out what happened to the mother in episode 2020 or something, and like we're gonna have to wait that
Mm,
long because they're just so good at dropping little hints here and there, those writing
mm.
teams. So
I think this, if unless I'm wrong, I think this is only like the second time they've even mentioned her
yes,
in the whole
uh,
show.
I can't even recall the first time.
Well,
So
someone told me, I thought it was actually one of the, but then someone reminded me that there was, I haven't rechecked it myself, that there was a time when Holmes says there's only a few people I love in this world, like you,
yes, oh yeah, you're
like my
right.
mother, you, and then,
Yep.
so,
So I mean, I'm just come on, say give it to me already. I want to see it. So I'm so excited.
now, one thing I find quite a intriguing concept is we see from here that while of course Holmes Senior is smart, he's not exactly like Holmes, which is kind of a like,
Mm-hmm.
Holmes is like this because his father's this smart, his father's bright, but he doesn't he's not an detective.
Yeah, so just imagine when what Morland was seeing when Sherlock was a young boy, and I think it was apparent that he had this extra capabilities, extra mental prowess that, in, and and he could see it developing in his son, and I think maybe that played a part in their tension. But yeah, I mean, just on that scene alone, we can imagine such backstories already, right? So
Indeed.
amazing.
And actually, I think we get because something we've even well, I forget the name of the episode, but it was the one where Holmes talked about the first ever crime, like when he did pen pals with the murder
Yes. Oh my God, I love that
suspect.
episode. Yes. So
He said that's why he got into he started investigating, but really it doesn't explain why. Because they've said in many different Holmes, and especially in BBC Sherlock, they said why is Holmes like why isn't he a criminal? And I think when we talk about because his father is not he's neutral. He
yes,
hasn't good or he does some good. He does. I think that's a big thing in why Holmes is is on the side of the angels, as they
yes,
say. It's because he wants to do. He doesn't want to be his father. He doesn't want to be ambivalent. He wants to physically do good. He wants to tip the scales. I think that's what he's feeling. He's doing what his father does not
yes.
do.
I think that's been sort of textured in throughout the previous three seasons. That what you just described. That's why this show doesn't get enough credit and how much depth you can get from such a quote unquote procedural episode, right? So, yeah. So that was all brought to the fore with this that end scene of Moreland and Sherlock and that confrontation.
Mm.
Where every line from Moreland, every line from Sherlock was just, the probably your favorite line that you're gonna describe later on. It's amazing, amazing way to conclude the episode. So I really, really thought this episode is quite a strong one in the
Uh,
lineup of elementary episodes.
So now, before we get into final thoughts, a question I think we should ask for this episode: do we
Yeah.
think his father actually wants to reconnect, or is it some kind of ploy?
What you can go either way with that kind of question,
Hmm.
right? Because I imagine it's quite sincere because he's like
Me too.
Sherlock, you're no good at playing the
It'd be so
victim.
easy. It'd be so easy and
Yes,
cliche to make him a villain,
yes,
and that's not what the writer. I think the writers would not make. I mean, I could. I just hope they don't. I mean, I would love the idea that they like this season is about him reconnecting with his and it's
yep,
something. And where they're gonna go with that, I have no idea. But it's gonna keep me
yeah.
watching.
So I would assume that yes, I think it's quite sincere, but even as his sincerity is the reason behind the reconnection, Moreland is still has ties in many big pies and big corporations, and I think that might be a complicating factor in the way they try to reconnect, and it's all the more richer for it. So I like you, I can't wait for how they're going to play this out.
You know, I know there's absolutely no reason for them to meet, but I want to see Moreland with Moriarty.
Oh my God, that's going to be like,
Just to see Natalie Dormer and John Noble
oh my
together.
God. And you know what, and they both hold Sherlock's soul in some kind of strong,
Yes.
possessive
There's a way
nature.
they could do it. Have her know something about some business, like she's connected to
Oh my
something of one of
God.
his businesses.
Oh my God, that's a really rich storyline that it's just gonna be fantastic down the line
Mm.
whenever we get to see that. Yes, so it could
So
be
what?
it's gonna be fantastic whenever they put that out, if they do put that out of Moriarty and Morland in one episode, and because Morland is involved in so many governments and big companies, and so is Moriarty, and Dare we conspiracy say even that maybe they've been together all along? And I mean, in terms of like planning Sherlock's life, it could have been all planned. That I want you to meet my son, and this is gonna happen.
Mm.
I don't know. And of course she fell in love with him, but that's 4 seasons ago. But I mean, it's so rich with possibility. We can imagine many kinds of scenarios once that happens, and they have the
So
right
what are
performers
your
to do
final
it, right?
what are your final thoughts on this episode?
My final thoughts on this episode is I think it's they had a rich enough mystery to relate to the I think which is the true heart of the episode, which is Marlon and Sherlock, and they're getting together. And it's because the like I said earlier, because the writers know what our expectations are of this episode, and they play to it very well, and it just makes it, these recurring pleasures make me love the show all the more. So I'm glad they had all these, the Clyde callback, the waking up Joan callback, and all these kinds of things, how it's tied up together, and it's structured so well. I give this one of the best, maybe the best episode of the 4 episode season we've had so far. I mean, everything was good, but this was, I think, just we're getting the start of the true arc of Merlin and Sherlock coming soon. So they've started off really well. So let's watch it again, maybe before Thursday comes again. I think we should. I'm gonna see this episode again.
Yeah. Yes, for me, before we go, I'll mention my two favorite lines of
Okay.
episode are, as long as you don't take your wine intravenously,
Yes.
develop the guise of a clown from the
Yes.
future, and this is the third one, which I like the most because anything that makes fun of frat boys. These are the lower primates I'd like you to
Oh my
consider.
gosh. Did you also like? Do you want me to say the magic words? It's thank you. How about? Did you like?
Yeah, yes, oh yeah. Oh, the way Johnny said thank you was great. So my final thoughts of the episode. I mean, this, like, I could go with you in saying this is my favorite one of the episodes. Sorry, because now, of course, that's a big piece of Moreland and Sherlock's connections, and like I said, I'm really interested to see where they're going to go with
Yep.
that and how it's going to tie in the cases. But what got me this episode was like, it had me guessing, it intrigued me, the way they compartmentalized it
Yes.
was amazing. I could definitely go with you and saying this is probably my favorite for the season so
Yes.
far.
So we're off to a great start. So uh,
Yeah.
great elementary. You're so good.
Yeah, so we like this. We of course, Karen, it was great having you on, and we'd love to have you. We'll probably have you on again if your schedule allows
Oh,
it.
sure. And I apologize. I probably talk too much, but I just this show just makes me do that.
That's what we need. That's what the fans want.
Okay. Yes. So watch Sherlock, everyone, and thanks so much, Zachary.
Yeah. So everyone, it's time for us to depart. But the game is afoot.